For the last few years, I've been a writer in residence at the Stanford Medical School. I was hired by an incredible woman. She's a poet and an anesthesiologist named Audrey Schaefer, and she started the Medicine in the Muse program to reintroduce humanities back into medical education and training. My job was to teach writing, storytelling, and general communication skills to physicians, nurses, medical students, and other healthcare workers. And I thought I'd get a ton of great student essays about dissecting cadavers and poems about the spleen. And I did, but almost immediately I started getting more essays that made me really anxious and really worried. My students were writing about their crushing anxiety, the unbearable pressure on them to succeed, their mental health diagnoses, their suicide attempts, how alone and isolated they felt, and wondered if they'd gone into the right profession, and they weren't even doctors yet. This is my student, Uriel Sanchez.
The choice you are given through medicine from a lot of your mentors even is like, you have to choose, like being a really good person or a really good doctor.
Physicians' own humanity and emotional well-being are almost never made a core part of their training or even acknowledged. And real vulnerability, like sharing certain mental health diagnoses, for example, can be absolutely career-ending. But nearly 30% of American medical students are depressed, and 1 in 10 have thought about suicide, and it's actually even worse for practicing physicians. There's really widespread job dissatisfaction, high rates of depression, and doctors have one of the highest suicide rates of any profession in the United States. This is scary. Not just for them, but for us too. I really think doctors have the most important job, and if their lives are at stake, ours are too. Now, I am absolutely not a mental health professional. I'm a writer, which most days is absolutely the complete and total opposite. But I can tell you that the more opportunities that I give healthcare workers to share their daily frustrations, their fears, their joys, what surprises them, what they resent, the better they seem to feel. So at Medicine the Muse, we offer evening, weekend, and day-long storytelling workshops at farms and other places with really good food. I invite other journalists, writers, producers, podcasters, and poets, and they teach writing, communication, and storytelling skills to our participants. And those participants practice being vulnerable by sharing their stories out loud with one another. And in doing so, they reconnect with what drew them to medicine in the first place. These are the skills they'll draw on when they realize and are confronted with the stressful, messy reality of the work they've chosen. This is how they realize it's a calling. So I have a prescription here for you today. It's not from physicians, it's for them, and I ask my students for help. And before I start, let me just say I work with doctors, but I'm absolutely convinced that this applies to almost any profession, especially those of us who are so committed to our work, and it can be so intense and overwhelming that sometimes we forget why we chose to do it in the first place. To me, sharing a true, vulnerable story is a lot like raising a flag up a flagpole. Other people see it. If they agree with it and it resonates with them, they come and stand under it with you. That's what my student Maite Van Hentenrich did.
I mean, it was super anxiety-inducing, and I shared parts of myself that I really have probably told